Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is the 23rd of June 2022. These are the stories that will be under discussion during the course of the show. We'll begin with the latest estimates as far as COVID-19 are concerned. The number of cases are increasing across the country. As we speak, the special positivity ratio has been seen in Sindh, in Karachi and in Hyderabad. Nevertheless, other cities of Pakistan are also seeing a percentage ratio of 2% or more. This causes concern because of the new variant BA4 and BA5 that have entered Pakistan and are quite vicious as far as their symptoms and signs are concerned. Although those who have had their booster shots and their normal shots will have lesser symptoms, but those who haven't will have severe symptoms. And that is why the need to not only get yourselves vaccinated, but also boosted becomes extremely important. This is going to be our first story. Our second story of the day, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the looming humanitarian crisis that now engulfs Afghanistan. Already it was engulfed in an economic and humanitarian crisis, but now what is happening is that the earthquake that happened in Afghanistan has given rise to a lot of other economic and humanitarian issues, with the number of deaths exceeding 1,000, the number of injured exceeding the hundreds, and different countries across the world, including the United Nations, also pledging aid to Afghanistan. Nevertheless, is that aid enough for the country? What needs to be done now in the wake of this earthquake for our neighboring country? Pakistan is also helping Afghanistan with sending aid to its neighborhood country. This is going to be our second segment. Then we'll be talking about a virus that causes polio. We know that Pakistan has had 1 or 2 polio cases in the last few months, but this was unexpected. In London, sewage samples have revealed traces of the polio virus. Now, the disease was common in the United Kingdom in the 1950s, but it was eliminated by 2003. Now, the United Kingdom Security Agency said this was probably imported to London by someone who had recently been vaccinated overseas with a live form of the virus. Nevertheless, it's quite strange that London now gets sewerage water with the polio virus. Then we'll be talking about 5 Pakistani civil servants who have received awards from a global campaign for demonstrating honesty, loyalty and diligence in their respective fields, something that's extremely important, especially for countries such as Pakistan. These Pakistanis were awarded as part of an Integrity Icon, a campaign that is run by Accountability Lab. And of course, congratulations to all of these 5. We'll be naming them as part of this segment. And finally, we'll be talking about a 91-year-old man who has completed his PhD from Bahawalpur. As we say, there is no age to educate yourself, and this man is proof of that. At the age of 91, he has finished his PhD in the Punjabi language from the Bahawalpur University, from the Bahauddin Zakaria University. And he says that he has always wanted to read books, and he has authored himself more than 30 books. This is going to be our last story. Let's begin with our first segment, and that concerns COVID-19, the increased number of cases, the positivity ratio that is also increasing across the country, and the need to follow the SOPs and get yourselves vaccinated. More in the following report.
The recent surge in coronavirus cases in Pakistan threatens to reverse hard-earned national gains against the pandemic. Pakistan has seen a rapid increase in daily COVID-19 cases, with the country recording 268 infections, 1 death, and a positivity ratio of 2.14%, according to information issued by National Institute of Health Pakistan. The COVID-19 positivity ratio has surpassed 21% in Karachi as the infection spreads rapidly throughout the city. In order to avert an untoward situation, the federal and provincial leadership gathered at the National Command and Operations Center to deliberate on the strategy to combat evolving 6th wave of COVID-19. It was decided to expedite the vaccination of citizens, as it is the best defense against the pandemic. Indicating an encouraging situation, NIH data shows that 85% of the eligible population has been fully vaccinated and 93% has been partially vaccinated. Pakistan on May the 9th reported the country's first case of Omicron subvariant, and Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif restored National Command and Operations Center in May, an umbrella body that led Pakistan's fight against the coronavirus pandemic. Keeping in view the current pandemic situation, administration of booster does on a priority basis, and strict adherence to SOPs is indispensable to avert any catastrophe.
Dr. Sardar Shoaib Khan, who's a specialist in general medicine and consultant as well, joins us online. Dr. Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Dr. Saab, what do you attribute this recent increase in the number of Omicron cases or COVID-19 cases in Pakistan? We know that the percentage of those who have been vaccinated is quite high, 80% and more. Nevertheless, how does COVID-19 still creep into the society such as that in Pakistan?
You, Omar, and all your listeners. That is a question that comes into our minds all the time. That everyone is vaccinated. We've all had COVID-19 infections in the past. So why is this COVID-19 coming back again? So the answer is that basically our immunity towards this virus, whether it is acquired through vaccination or it is acquired through previous infection, is not permanent, and it can wax and wane. And especially with the vaccination, we've seen from research that after two injections of a vaccine, the vaccine drops below, the protection drops below 50% after 6 months. With the previous infection, the protection is better and it can last for more than a year. But even then, our immunity level drops over time. And as the immunity level drops, also the second factor is that the virus itself changes and it mutates. And as you will see that now, you will see news that there's this new variant which they're calling BA.5. And every time the virus mutates, it becomes that more vaccine evasive. So it can evade previous vaccines, it can evade previous immunity acquired through infection. And these two factors, when they come together, waning immunity and this changing virus, means that we can always become vulnerable as a community again towards any new variant of this
But
virus.
Dr. Saab, if we are to become vulnerable every few months against new mutations of this virus, then what needs to be done? What is the priority? Getting oneself vaccinated by booster shots every 6 months or so, following the SOPs, or a combination of both?
I think the answer is again different for different communities. It depends on how high risk that community is. If people are very young in a certain community, like in Pakistan, for young people the risk is so little and those so small that it will be hard to justify vaccination all over again every 6 months for the whole life. But in older people, especially those above 60, 70, and those with previous diseases like diabetes, obesity, asthma, COPD, those people, you will see the guidelines in UK that there's different guidelines for low risk people and there's different guidelines for high risk people. And this type of mix and match approach will have to be followed, and high risk people will have to be vaccinated preferentially, especially and similarly people who work in high risk environment. For example, doctors, paramedics and nurses who are going to be working with people with COVID infections, they are probably much more likely to catch these infections. So they need to be vaccinated with booster doses, and those with high risk. Those with very low risk, it is a difficult question to ask because you will need boosters every 6 months, and the risk from these infections in these young people who don't have any other diseases is low.
All right. Now, Dr. Saab, speaking of getting yourself vaccinated, now we've also heard in the West that they are vaccinating children below the age of 5. Do you feel that that has any risk in the future as far as the immunity of these children are concerned? Or do you feel that immunizing or vaccinating them against COVID-19 from the very beginning will boost their immunity against different variations of the virus?
Again, it's an important question, and it's a debate that's ongoing in the scientific community, whether to vaccinate very young people or not. The fact of the matter is that these young children are at extremely low risk. Extremely low risk. When I say that, that means that in 100,000 or million people, one of them might get a serious disease. And vaccine itself, obviously it carries some pain and some risk with it, as that you get a bit of fever as well. So again, the scientific community is divided regarding the benefit of vaccinating very young people. I don't see the benefit of vaccinating young people. I would prefer there to be a targeted approach where we vaccinate the high-risk people who are high risk of exposure and those who got comorbidities and those who are older age. and those are the people which will get the most benefit from vaccinations.
All right, Dr. Saab, I had interviewed a geneticist some time back, and he had told me that COVID-19 was here to stay for at least 1 or 2 generations, meaning 10 plus years. Now, in this whole timeline, if new variations are going to come, new mutations are going to come every few months, you said that those who are, of course, at high risk of immunity, or those whose immunity is quite low or are of a certain age, need to get themselves vaccinated by booster shots every 6 months. Now, a lot of people here also in Pakistan and other countries believe that COVID-19 is gone. So, of course, the following of the SOPs has decreased to quite some extent. With Eid ul-Azha, that is just around the corner, what would you like to tell the people in Pakistan or other countries who are going to assemble in large numbers for occasions such as Eid ul-Azha?
So I think that is a very good point that you raised. That is true that in Pakistan, because I practice here and I see that people just have forgotten that there was a COVID-19 and which completely, affected our lives and livelihoods. The fact of the matter is that the disease is not gone. It's here and it's here to stay, just like the geneticist who in your program. And we've already seen that it's been 2 to 3 years, and there's multiple variants, one after the other. This new variant BA5 is the new variant among many others that have affected us. And you will say that in UK it's and in Portugal it's the dominant virus now. We've had reports from Karachi as well, and we have to accept that we will have to live with it. So people, it is the responsibility of the government, of media like yourself, of doctors like us, and all health community to give this awareness to our people that this is COVID-19 is among us. It's going to stay among us, and we will have to learn to live with it. People who are at high risk will have to make sure that they think of it as a risk. When they are going to a wedding, to a place where there will be a lot of people, maybe you need to put on your mask, and maybe you need to practice, safe hygienic practices. And vaccination is available. Our government is providing this vaccination free of cost. So, why not get it? If you're at high risk, if your doctor tells you that you've got health problems like, COPD, asthma, diabetes, obesity, heart disease, then probably you should think about getting this booster dose every 6 to 12 months and decrease this risk. Why not? For the rest of the people, again, it depends on that individual how high risk that is.
All right. Dr. Saab, also another fact remains as far as the wearing of masks is concerned. A lot of people say the masks are not, do not help enough as far as not catching the disease is concerned. Do you agree with that? Are there different types of masks that provide different levels of protection? Is that true as well?
Well, I personally, I've looked at all the evidence, and actually evidence is divided on, whether it does provide protection and how much. At least it does help, in stopping us spread the virus from ourselves. But certainly there is some protection, especially the respirator masks N95. They certainly do help us from stopping and acquiring infection, and that is why people, doctors and nurses and paramedics who work in close proximity with people with COVID-19, they do use it, and they should use it. Again, people in community, if again, mask wearing practices needs to be learnt as well. There is certain hygienic practices that you need to practice. You're not allowed to touch your mask again and again and in the vicinity of the mask. And if you follow those advices, then yes, you can use this mask effectively to protect against acquiring infection as well.
Dr. Saab, also washing your hands with soap or with any form of sanitizer if soap is not available. Do you feel with the new mutations that are coming that the washing of your hands still is as acceptable a means to prevent yourself from getting the disease?
Yes, I would strongly urge all my countrymen to practice this. This is a teaching of Islam as well, that you should wash your hands regularly. After going to the washroom, before eating, and whenever you've had a sneeze or a cough. It's best to wash your hands with soap or with sanitizer, and especially in those, for doctors and nurses, we obviously practice it regularly and all the time. But even in normal community, we should do it ourselves, and we should teach it to our children as well, in schools and at homes.
All right, Dr. Saab, also, a lot of question marks are there, so I'd like your point of view on that. What about surfaces such as tables, such as pens, such as papers, such as mobile phones? Do they need to be cleaned regularly as well?
Yes, I mean, we know from research that, the virus does stay on these surfaces for a significant length of time, and they are a major mechanism of transfer. So I would say that it is difficult, but if possible, all such surfaces that come into contact with a lot of different people coming over and over again, if that establishment can practice this to clean this regularly, then this should really help in not only COVID. Let's remember that COVID-19 is not the only disease that spreads among us. There are many others like hepatitis, tuberculosis, and many other different types of viruses, influenza. These are all over, all around us. So these practices that you're mentioning, like washing hands, cleaning surfaces, these are good hygienic practices that should be practiced all the time, COVID-19 or no COVID-19. These, if we practice them, they will help us preserve our health for longer.
All right. Dr. Saab, also finally, what I'd like to understand is, with the new mutations coming, a lot of people also don't feel afraid in the society, even in Pakistan, saying that the new variants are not as virulent or as aggressive as the previous. Do you agree, or do you still have something to tell these people who are no longer afraid of these new variants?
Well, there is some good news in that and some bad news in that. The good news is that if you do get a virus, again, like Omicron or BA5, the chances of getting severe infection and getting admitted are lower compared to previous infections like Delta and Alpha. However, if you are vulnerable, then again that risk goes higher. But the other flip side is that these viruses are very highly transmissible. 2, 3, 4, 5 times more transmissible than the first variant that we saw. So which means that this will transmit very rapidly among our population if we're not careful, and that means that it is more likely to reach those vulnerable people who are more likely to get the most severe disease. But for an average person, the virus itself is less dangerous in terms of getting severe infection, in terms of getting infection, in terms of needing ventilation, and and in terms of losing life. But it does not mean that we can ignore it.
All right, that's a very important point. We should never ignore viruses such as COVID-19. Thank you very much, Dr. Sardar Shoaib Khan Saab, Consultant General Medicine, to have joined us and to have talked to us about COVID-19, this new supposed wave that is slowly and steadily creeping into different countries, including Pakistan. We've got a huge positivity ratio in Karachi that is exceeding 20%, and also in other parts of Pakistan where the positivity ratio is exceeding 2%. We should not ignore it. We should follow the SOPs. And if you are vulnerable, if you are immunocompromised one way or the other, or have reached a certain age, you need to get your booster shot at the earliest. Coming to our second story, ladies and gentlemen, that concerns the earthquake that hit Afghanistan. More than 1,000 people have lost their lives. Scores of hundreds and hundreds are injured, and we don't even know the exact estimates because there are a lot of areas which are still unreachable by the people in Afghanistan. A lot of aid is needed by Afghanistan. A lot of countries have pledged it. Pakistan has sent it. Is that enough? More in the following report.
A 6.1 magnitude earthquake has jolted southeast Afghanistan, killing more than 1,000 people and left scores injured. Rescue operations are complicated by difficult conditions, including heavy rains, landslides, and many villages being nestled in inaccessible hillside areas. In Pakistan, tremors were felt in Peshawar, Islamabad, Lahore, Kohat, Mohmand, Swat, Bunair, and other parts of Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said the United Nations is fully mobilized, providing initial support while emphasizing that it is the time for solidarity with Afghans. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif extended his condolences and an offer of support to Afghan brethren. Premier Shahbaz further elaborated that people in Pakistan share the grief and sorrow of their Afghan brethren, and relevant authorities are working to support Afghanistan in this time time of need. Pakistan is dispatching 8 truckloads of aid to quake-hit Afghanistan, and humanitarian aid including tents, covers, blankets and medicines will be handed over to Afghan authorities. Afghanistan is also grappling with the severe economic crisis, and recent flooding in many regions has added to the difficulty for Afghan masses. It is pertinent to mention here that the large parts of South Asia are seismically active because tectonic plate known as the Indian plate is pushing north into the Euro-Asian plate.
Shahid Kiani Saab, former ambassador, joins us online. Shahid Saab, it's a pleasure to have you here for this segment. Shahid Saab, the quake in Afghanistan is also proof of what Afghanistan is going through and has shown how much aid is needed in our neighborhood brotherly country. Will the world finally stand up to the crisis that has now hit Afghanistan and is hitting Afghanistan again and again and again, and finally do something for it?
The thing is that this earthquake has added to the serious humanitarian crisis which Afghanistan is going through since the American troops left Afghanistan. Now the problem is twofold. I'm believe or not that what I was saying maybe a few months back, I have done a rethink. I can imagine that the Afghan government is short of, naturally speaking, hardly has any funds out of the £6 billion. I think the Americans have released only 3.5, and also they have given it to the NGOs to assist Afghanistan. The Afghan government has absolutely no money to give to the government servants or to its other employees. So that is one problem which Afghanistan is going, and humanitarian crisis has now quadrupled because of this earthquake which we just Afghanistan experienced. About 1,000 people have died, and they have no wherewithal as how to overcome this thing, how to help. But at the same time, sir, I would say that while the humanitarian crisis is there, the Afghan government has to rethink, meaning we are living in a real world. The European countries, the United States and other Western countries which have these not only financial assistance, but they have the wherewithal to come and assist. They are asking for the last nearly so many months that there should be an inclusive government. Other ethnic minorities should also be part of the government, and the women folk should also be allowed to become part of the society, allowed so that they come and study in the schools. Now the Taliban have become very rigid, meaning this is your own. This is your own.
But this brings me to a very important point, Shahid Saab. Do you feel that this rigidness of the Taliban government is going to exacerbate the current crisis that has engulfed Afghanistan?
Absolutely, sir. The thing is, how on earth can you, meaning let's forget about what the Western countries are saying.
Shahid Saab, we'll be in conversation with you, but we have to go to a short break. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom. I'm Omar Khalid, and we are in conversation with Shahid Kiani Saab, former ambassador, talking about the earthquake that has hit Afghanistan that has further aggravated the current situation that is humanitarian and economic in the country. Shahid Kiani Saab, I was asking you about the Taliban's rigidness that you had yourself expressed, and how that is going to exacerbate the current economic and humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan.
Khalid, if you recall, as we went for the break, I said Afghanistan is a sovereign country. This is a domestic issue, the participation of the female. But the problem is, how on earth can the Afghanistan government, Taliban government, deny 50% of its population its right? It's a right of education. Meaning, why on earth are you doing this? The thing is, this is a real world. People who have to donate or people who have to assist you, they have a condition. And I think that condition helps your own people. They say one inclusive government so that you do not go back into the civil war with the ethnic minorities, and then allow the 50% population to be educated. This is something which I think every sane person in the world would accept. So this is something, I'm not saying make it conditional, but I think the Taliban government should have understood by now that in these few months, these governments have not been flexible to your rigidness. The other thing is, sir, in addition to the humanitarian crisis which the Afghan government was going through, this natural disaster may not be the last one. You might tomorrow have some floods. What are you going to do? So the Afghan Taliban should be able to become more, should be more realistic. I'm just giving you an example. The Indians, they were hands and glove with the previous government. But now the Taliban sat down with the official delegation of the Indians who came to them. And look at Pakistan. Pakistan does not allow this transit goods from Indians to go, but the Pakistan government showed a large heartedness and said, okay, allow the wheat to be transported from India to Afghanistan. So if you can shake hands with the Indians, I don't think you should have any problems to talk to to listen to the Western governments and in the larger interest of your own people. At this time, you need assistance and you need humanitarian assistance and urgent assistance. You know, it has to come now, right now, not tomorrow. So show some flexibility. So look, Pakistan has said very clearly that we are here, we will assist, we are with the people of Afghanistan, because they have suffered in the last 4 decades. Since the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan till today, the people have been, over 3 million living in Pakistan. There is no end to their woeful tales. So I think this is time the Taliban should listen to the outside world so that their own people can be helped. This is something which is not a very big deal.
But apparently it looks, Shahid Saab, as if it's going to be a very big deal for the Taliban, or else they would have already accepted to send their women and their girls to education institutions, and we would not have seen media persons selling small items on the street instead of presenting news and programs on the television. We've seen so many pictures in the last few days that it becomes extremely depressing. But in this whole context also adds the earthquake that has shook Afghanistan, more than 1,000 dead. And we don't even know, Shahid Saab, how many, what is the actual number, because there are so many places that are unreachable. There are so many people that might be buried under the rubble that we don't even know whether that 1,000 is maybe only a fraction of the actual amount of people who have been either been killed or have been injured by that. The aid, Shahid Saab, I'm coming to that, is of course mandatory, and some countries are sending it. Pakistan is sending truckloads of aid. Also, the US apparently is going to send aid. Japan and South Korea have pledged it. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has also talked about it. Is that enough?
The thing is, we stand, all these countries which you are naming, they stand with the people of Afghanistan. This is something very important. We try to understand humanitarian assistance is for the people of Afghanistan. Now, this is an ideal time for the Afghan, the Taliban government to open up and say that, okay, we'll allow these people, because these assistance will go to the hinterland, to men, women, female, children, all it should go. This is the time now to open up. And let's see what they do, because this is, as I said, this is not the last natural disaster. Countries go through it. If you recall, in 2005 we had the earthquake in Pakistan, and it took us time. The government of Pakistan time to find out which other areas have been hit by the earthquake. So, as you said very rightly, Khalid, that the Afghan government doesn't know, because their system is not very functional throughout the country, that which other areas have been hit. It's very unfortunate. And we are praying, we pray that the Afghan, as less, deaths should be reported or injured. Let's hope that the Afghan government overcomes these problems, and it should welcome the assistance of these Western countries. It should forget about at this time that how much money is frozen. Rather, I would say that the Americans should now should say that, okay, past is past. Let the money which they have frozen, this belongs to the people of Afghanistan, give it to them and say that, okay, this money is yours, go and now spend on the people of Afghanistan. So let's hope, I hope that this thing happens.
Let's hope for the best. We can only remain optimistic, Shahid Kiani Saab. But of course, a huge disaster has engulfed Afghanistan on top of the existing disaster that it is pertaining to or dealing with, which is, of course, humanitarian and economic in nature. We can only pray and wish for the best and do whatever we can in our capacity. We are doing that as far as Pakistan is concerned. Thank you very much, Shahid Kiani Saab, former ambassador, to have joined us, to have talked to us about Afghanistan and the earthquake and, of course, what it has all led to, the exacerbation of the humanitarian and economic crisis. Let's come very quickly to our last three stories. The first concerns polio. We've had a very small number of cases in Pakistan. Nevertheless, this comes as a very strange development. The virus that causes polio now has been detected in a concerning number of sewage samples in London. This has been stated by health officials. This disease, that is polio, was common in the 1950s in the United Kingdom, but of course disseminated, finished by the year 2003. What the health agencies say that this polio could have probably been imported to London by someone who was recently vaccinated overseas with a live version of that virus, and of course after defecation that might have gone into the sewage water. But this of course causes a lot of concern because as per the UK health sector, the amount of polio virus that has been found in the sewage waters is quite uncommon. It has been found in the past, but this time the amount is quite high. Let's hope that it doesn't exacerbate or it doesn't damage further or causes incidents within the United Kingdom. Nevertheless, the children are vaccinated against the poliomyelitis, and the health sector has also said that those children who haven't been need to get themselves vaccinated ASAP against polio. Let's come to our next story, and that is about integrity and integrity icons. Now, a global campaign has recognized Pakistani civil servants for their honesty, loyalty, diligence in their respective fields. Let me name them one by one. Zille Huma, Deputy Director of the Press Information Department in Islamabad; Shahzadi Naushad, a Deputy Superintendent of Police Traffic in charge of Haripur, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa; Romana Murad Khoso, a senior section officer from Quetta and Balochistan; Nasir Bashir, who is an assistant professor at the government at Diyal Singh in Lahore, Punjab; and Muhammad Nasir Musvi, a Deputy Director Admin at the Directorate of Schools Education Primary in Sakhar, Sindh. Congratulations to all five of you, and of course it changes the image of Pakistan for all those who thought that Pakistan was more or less a corrupt country, an image that is propagated more or less by the West. Nevertheless, this shows that Pakistan is also full of people who are full of integrity, loyalty and diligence towards themselves, towards their countrymen and towards their fields. Let's come to our last story, and that concerns the man from Multan, a man whose name is Muhammad Hanif Chaudhry. At the age of 91 has completed his PhD degree in the Punjabi language from the Bahauddin Zikaria University. A lot of people, when he was passing his PhD, said, why are you doing your PhD? Why are you completing education at this age? And what is the need for that? The need, as this person has said, is to continue getting education whatever your age might be. And of course, this is what our religion says, this is what we need to do as well. We should never stop getting ourselves educated one way or the other, through degrees or through reading or through other forms of getting oneself more educated about what different factions of society give us, tell us, and how we can also better ourselves through education. This person, who is Muhammad Hanif Chaudhry, has also authored many books. And apparently, as per the information that we've received, he has so far written 33 books. His 34th book is being written on the history of Multan in the last century. He has said that it is his love for knowledge that has motivated him to become a PhD holder at this stage of his life, and he has also expressed gratitude to his children to have supported him all the way. We congratulate you, Mr. Chaudhry, to have achieved this feat at the age of 91, and I think you are an example for so many others to follow. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news segment stories that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. As I've said in the beginning of the show, follow the SOPs and get yourselves vaccinated. Allah Hafiz.